Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's regular Board of Directors meeting. I would like to invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:35. Good evening, everybody. Guidelines from Governor Inslee's office in response to the COVID-19 outbreak and the Open Public Meeting Act allows in-person meetings to occur, but are limited to 25% capacity with all participants wearing a face mask. Those who cannot attend in person this evening are joining us via Zoom webinar. We welcome everybody. I'm going to ask for a roll call to confirm the attendees. Director Ginny Gronwall.
Here.
Director Rob Perkins.
Here.
Director Julie Bocanegra.
Here.
Director Rachel Rogers.
Here.
Administrative Assistant Lori Stroll. Here. Okay. Okay. And due to a very full agenda this evening, the December edition of the Good News will be shared with all staff in the community tomorrow, so take note of that. And now I am going to ask Director Gronwall to read the land acknowledgement for us tonight.
Wonderful. Evergreen Public Schools resides on the traditional lands of the Chinookan peoples and the Cowlitz tribe. They have lived on and cared for this land and its waterways since time immemorial. We thank them for their stewardship and make this acknowledgement to open a space of recognition, inclusion, and respect for all Indigenous students, families, and staff in our community.
Okay, now I would like to request a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight's regular Board of Directors meeting.
I move to adopt tonight's agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay. Next up is the board consent agenda.
I move that we approve the board's consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next, I am calling for an executive session. Prior to, let's see here. We're going to go into executive session for approximately 10 minutes, and then we will reconvene. This is to review the performance of a public employee. And we're going to reconvene our meeting. I need to ask for a motion.
I move that the board accept the recommendation of the Chief Operating Officer to terminate the employment of Jacob Thomas for the reasons provided by the Chief Operations Officer, and that the Chief Operation Officer provide appropriate written notice to Jacob Thomas of the board's actions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve the superintendent consent agenda?
I move adoption of the superintendent's consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And now the fun stuff. I would like to introduce Greg Kimsey, Clark County Auditor, as he administers the oath of office to Ginny Gronwald and Julie Bocanegra. Thank you for being with us tonight.
It's a great honor to be invited. Thank you.
Okay, ladies.
Do we need a microphone?
Here you go.
There you go. All right.
Greg might need it too.
You guys are pros.
We got this.
So you raise your right hand and then say I, and state your name. I
Julie Bocanegra,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am a citizen of the United States
that I am a citizen of the United States
and the state of Washington,
and the state of Washington,
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws
and the Constitution and laws
of the state of Washington,
of the state of Washington,
and will to the best of my judgment,
and will to the best of my judgment,
skills, and ability, truly, faithfully, diligently, and impartially perform the duties of the office of Evergreen School District number 114,
Evergreen School District number 114,
School Board Director District number 1
School Board Director District 1-5,
in and for Clark County, Washington,
in and for Clark County, Washington,
as such duties are prescribed by law.
as such duties are prescribed as law.
Well done.
Thank you. My arm is.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Continually, we have to sign this.
We thank Greg for being with us. This is not his first rodeo with us, and we're always happy when he's here because that means somebody's won their election, and that's exciting stuff. Congratulations to Julie and Jenny. Both have been exemplary board members, and we're happy they're maintaining their position with us. Thank you, Greg. Okay, next on our agenda is board reorganization. I need a motion.
So our board, by our policy, reorgs the first meeting, which is our only meeting that we have in December. I've been thinking about it, and because of the times that we've been under, I feel like it would make sense for us maybe just to delay our reorganization for a month, maybe the last meeting in January, just so we can kind of continue how we are doing things at the moment. I know that our board directed our president, Victoria Bradford, to start the process for the search for the interim, and it would make sense for us to continue right in the roles that we're in, and then maybe look down the road, maybe in a month, to do the reorganization. Is there any thoughts on that? Because I'd be willing to make a motion on that if.
I'm fine with it.
To postpone for a month. I'm good with that.
It looks possible from my point of view. It would be a motion to suspend policy, specifically policy 1210, the annual organization meeting election of officers, for the specific purpose of rescheduling this agenda item until the 25th. And if you'd like, I sort of prepared the officialese of how
Is
this
the
gets done.
25th the second meeting that we have in January?
I believe it is,
Okay.
yeah. Is that right, Lori?
Yes.
And so that would be a motion to suspend policy 1210, annual organization meeting election of officers, for the purpose of rescheduling agenda item 7, board reorganization, and retaining the current board chair, vice chair, and legislative representative as presently constituted until January 5th, and postpone agenda item 7, board reorganization, until the board meeting scheduled for January 25th.
Is that your motion, Rob?
That is my motion.
I will second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have deferred the board reorganization until January. Okay, next up is the Teaching and Learning Equity Update, and I'm going to call Julie Tumulty to present a department update to the board.
Aye. I don't think.
Hi, are we on?
Yes.
Okay, so just wanted to update you guys on some of the things that TLE has been doing in the last month. So when we started back in school in August, we got everyone together, all the administrators, we worked on kind of our big rocks of culturally responsive practices, MTSS, and inclusive practices. So then the school year got a little crazy and we delayed our district administrator meetings. The school buildings needed their administrators in building. We didn't want to pull people out, so we delayed those. Starting in November, we just began them again, and we held those over Zoom, November and December. And it's been really great. We are focusing on MTSS and working with the grant we have through the Gates Foundation and Ed Northwest is partnering with us to create and work on a system-wide level setting around what is MTSS, and then what does that look like as buildings are practicing that within their building. And then in December, so November was a big overview, and December we start digging into different practices. So in December we were working on data-driven decision making with students at the center. So I think it was a really great opportunity to reacquaint everyone with why are we here, what do we do, what do we care about, and to really dig into what they're doing. So principals and administrative teams had time to also look at their school improvement plans and look at where is that through line, where does the work end and begin with students. So again, we'll do that monthly. We have those meetings. The second half of those meetings are principal PLC meetings. So in the PLCs, we took a pulse of what the administrators wanted to focus on back in August, and then placed people in PLCs with district level leadership and specialists to help run those PLCs. The district level leadership and specialists are not the knowers of everything. They're the PLCs. They're there to guide and help the inquiry that the PLC groups are doing. So those PLCs center around MTSS, culturally responsive practices, data literacy, inclusive practices, and neighborhood schools. So it'll be exciting to hear how those are going and get more information from those as they continue. So that's been fun just to remember why. I think when we get in crisis mode, you put out fires, and part of what fills our bucket is not only like the students that we work with, but also that professional practice of learning and growing with colleagues, and then seeing how that affects our building. So that's fun to see and get that energy back. Also wanted you guys to be aware that back in May, we submitted the Academic and Student Wellbeing Recovery Plan. Part of that plan was to reevaluate in the fall and also look at how we're using Esser Funds. So by December 17th, we had to attest that there has been some work and outreach on how we're using Esser Funds. Jennifer Jacobson and the whole department, Lydio, helped a ton, and they put together a website with some information on Esser Funds. So on our district website, you'll see some information about Esser Funds. There's also outreach to give feedback about those funds. So we linked some information on there. Also with the board meetings and talking about how we've used funds so far, we provided that information. So we're gathering feedback right now. We also sent specific feedback out to our tribal groups. Sue Steinbrenner led that and created a letter to get information from our tribal groups. And then also we sent information to the staff. So the staff well-being survey that went out and is currently open, there was a question about how are we using Esser Funds? What do you see the needs are from your perspective on how we can really impact students and their recovery? So we're gathering that information, and then in early January, I hope to have some plans, some more targeted information about now how will we use these targeted funds for the next 3 years. But we're hearing some themes that you guys have already heard. Our social emotional learning is huge. There's a lot of requests for tutoring. Summer school, again, which is already in the planning and in the works for next year. So there was nothing shocking, but it was a really good reminder. If we have these funds, we can use them in some really good targeted ways, and we'll get some data from all these different groups on how to do that. So we'll collect that, and I'll have an update for you in January.
Great.
That's it. Thank you.
Question?
Questions?
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
thank you.
Julie. And next, we have an equity and inclusion update, and I'm going to ask Carissa Hightower to come up, and I think she has a guest for us to meet.
All right. Good evening, board. Good evening, community. Before we get to our wonderful student representative here, I am going to tell you about some of the work we've been. I'm sorry that I can't see you because I'm vertically challenged. We're going to get to. I want to share some of the work that we've been doing in our buildings with our equity advancement specialists, in addition to our SEL specialists. So. We have been partnering in all of our buildings, elementary, middle, and high, to help admin teams with establishing their equity teams and development of what will happen during those meetings and facilitating them. Some of our schools already had equity teams, and so we are working with them to help make sure that what they're doing there is effective. And that they're learning from each gathering. When I get down to a couple of other bullets, I'll tell you more about what I mean by that. Additionally, our specialists are helping schools with increasing their family engagement, specifically with families who they have not seen engagement from historically. We are also working with schools on restorative practices and dignity lessons across the grade levels. As we heard earlier, our students are in need of some additional social emotional learning skills, and we're doing that through the dignity lessons. And then when we do have issues in schools, we're responding to those with restorative practices, and our specialists are helping us with that. We're also doing some support with any equity professional development that's happening in buildings. Our specialists are either co-planning or helping to co-facilitate that. We're also working on some data collection and analysis for progress monitoring in our buildings with an equity lens, and that's in service to the school improvement plans that you all will have the pleasure of hearing coming up here soon. And the goals that they have set, our specialists have partnered with Ruth Beggs to help make sure that there are elements of some of the work that we were doing in the past, which is building our capacity to talk about the different subgroups that are in need of focused support, but that will provide support for all of our students. We are also building familiarity with the culturally responsive practices that we had our presentation on earlier in the year, as well as the content. A part of that work is the Ready for Rigor framework. So making sure that our staff understands that we're learning about the framework to make sure that when it's time to apply, that they feel capable and ready to do that. And that's what this year is about. Finally, we will have our December District Equity Advisory Committee meeting on this Thursday. And during this meeting, we will be talking about and working on our subcommittee groups. And what that is we spent quite a few of our meetings on last year with each of the school community groups that were represented. So students, parents, teachers, administrators, and they made a list of some of the things that they wanted to address and help to co-design solutions for, but we know we can't do all the things right at one time. So they selected a focus, and the focuses this year is what you'll be hearing about. So the first one you'll be hearing about is our student community member focus for that subcommittee. And I have Susan here to talk with you about SAFE, which is a committee for students advocating for equity. I introduce to you Susan Hong from Mountain View High School to talk with you more about that.
Thanks, Clarissa. Hi, Susan.
Yeah. Okay, hello everyone. So my name is Susan Hong and I am a junior at Mountain View High School. I am also a member of the District Equity Committee. So originally I saw this email pop up in my inbox and I was like, this sounds really interesting and it sounds like something I'd be really passionate about. So I decided just to sort of, give it a shot, and so I applied, and I still am very thankful that I was given this opportunity to participate in this committee. So now, my first meeting at this committee, I was completely overwhelmed. There were so many people with so many different experiences and so much knowledge of the world, and it seemed like I was sort of, way out of my zone, because it's just kind of scary to talk in a virtual room with so many people who you feel know so much more than you do. So it was very difficult for me to speak up. And I realized that I might not only be the only student with this problem. And I realized that, students around this district are probably finding it difficult to speak up for the things they care about and the things that they're passionate about. And I think this is a really big problem because honestly, us students, we're the ones in the schools. We're the ones sort of experiencing what this whole thing is about. So we're the ones that are experiencing the impacts of district policy, and we're the ones that are sort of seeing the obstacles that we go through because we go to school every single day. So as a result, I wanted to help create a place where students who are passionate about equity, inclusion, and diversity could sort of have a platform to express themselves, and a platform where they could be heard by not only other students, but also adults and decision makers, hopefully, in the district. So at these equity advisory meetings, we came up with the idea of SAFE, or Students Advocating for Equity, which is essentially a committee where students who are passionate about this idea can get together and sort of form a community where they have the chance to speak up and be heard, and they have the chance to know that their voices matter. So recently I've been working with a group of amazing students from, right now, currently Mountain View and Union High Schools, and we have been sort of planning out the roadmap for this community. So after discussing with my peers, we have come up with this sort of mission statement, which is to use student voices to help facilitate a safe and welcoming educational environment in this district. And we're going to do this specifically in an equity context by focusing on obstacles that are related to equity, inclusion, and diversity that we see in our everyday life. Okay, so, we came up with a short list of goals as well. So our primary goal with this committee is to amplify students' voices, because a lot of times students think that their voices don't matter, or that even if they do speak up, nobody's going to hear them. So what we want to do is we want to let students know that every single voice matters, and also that if they have something to say, if they say it in this committee, then they will be heard and changes will happen. We also want to provide students with a safe space to be vulnerable, because vulnerability is honestly the catalyst for change, right? We need to be vulnerable in order to see the problems that are in our community and to eventually solve them. And finally, essentially the entire overarching goal of this committee is to help students like make tangible change. It's one thing when we get together in a group and talk about our problems, but it's a completely other thing when we can take these problems and set goals and actually go out to achieve these goals. So me creating this committee, at first it was just sort of an idea floating around, but when I actually got the chance to make it and see it come to life before my eyes, it's been a really amazing experience, and I hope I can bring that to other students as well. So some potential ideas of the projects that this group hopefully might take on in the future. Now, of course, this all depends on the students that join, what they care about, what they personally see in our community, and what they think that our district needs in order to become a more successful place for everyone. But here are just some sample ideas that could potentially come up that we could address and take action. All right. So for next steps, originally we have planned on having December 17th to be the deadline for the interest form. Now, there was a bit of debate between whether we should, send this out as an interest form or an application. Now, ultimately, we decided on an interest form because we wanted all students to feel that they had a voice. We didn't want there to be a hierarchy or like some students' voices matter more than others, because really, honestly, everyone's voice is equal and everyone deserves to be heard. So currently, we have only 10 responses, 7 from Chehalia Middle School, because this committee is open to 8 to 12th graders, 2 from Union High School, and 1 from Mountain View High School. So as you can see, this is kind of limited right now, which is why I am thinking about perhaps extending this deadline, because we really want to make sure that we get equal well, not equal, but at least we get representation from every single school, or at least as close to as we can get in this district, so that, all voices can be heard. And eventually, this is an idea for the future to establish a planning committee with representation from all schools. Now, currently, I'm working with an amazing planning committee, but a lot of these girls have a lot of commitments that they have on the side, so they might not be able to dedicate that much time to this in the future, added on to the fact that we are all exclusively from Mountain View High School and Union High School, which are, I believe, the 2 largest high schools in the district. So that's not much of an equal representation. So I was considering doing this after the initial SAFE group was established. However, this might not actually come to fruition because the main goal of this group is to make sure that everyone has an equal voice. And if we do this through an application process, I am personally worried that we'll be giving off the idea that some voices are more important than others, and that is not what we want to do. And yeah, that's all for my presentation. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Can we ask a couple questions?
Yes, please do.
How many students are you looking to have on the committee?
So I personally am thinking around 15 to 30 in that range. We are not there yet. I hope that we can get there. Yes.
So do you have a plan to try to do some outreach to the other schools that you haven't heard from yet?
Yeah, so I was thinking about reaching out personally to the principals of those schools. Now, I'm not quite sure how the district system works and all that, but yeah, because I feel like we've been getting more responses from Chehalia, Mountain View, and Union, mainly because we personally know teachers there, and we are able to reach out to those teachers and sort of ask for them to promote it to their students. And regrettably, we don't really have the same contacts at the other schools.
Carissa?
Can I add to that so that I guess both of you are aware? So one of the things we're making sure that we do to increase the visibility of the interest form is to make sure that an all staff email is available so that all staff know that this is something to share with students. And then eventually utilize our parent communication tool, School Messenger, to make sure that parents are aware so they can encourage their students to be a part of this if they want. 15 to 30 after that third piece is a reality. You will likely have more students that are interested in that. And we won't turn any students away. Right? I just want to make sure I'm not speaking for you. And so if we go above 30, we'll continue to allow students to attend.
really appreciate your initiative and your forward thinking, Susan. The board is very, very excited about student voice and really looking to increase the input that we're receiving from students. So thank you for coordinating this and being such an innovator. It's impressive.
Thank you.
I appreciate hearing about this today. I think you're building hope, and I'm really rooting for the success of this.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you so much. Next up, we have on the agenda policy development. Tonight we'll be discussing policy number 1822, training and professional development for board members. This is a first reading. Policy 1822 was discussed in the workshop session at the last board meeting. This is the first reading and replaces 1805 open government training. At this time, if we have any questions or comments from the audience, we can hear those. Okay. And then, are there any questions or comments from the board?
The only comment I have is the last paragraph. We're going to need to insert our district in that line. Versus in addition to the required areas of training above the, and then it's got like,
Name of school
we have to
district.
insert Evergreen Public Schools,
Or my copy has that done.
right? Okay, that's an easy one. But
Yeah.
that's it, because these are the two required trainings. Ginny and I look like we have one to take within 90 days.
And I know the whole board attended the training when we were at the last WASDA conference. So on the cultural competency, equity, diversity, and inclusion training. So we're doing it.
Indeed. This looks like WASDA model policy
Mhm.
language. Has there been any change from their model for us? Do you know of? So we'd be just adopting
Yep.
what they recommend, right?
Pretty much boilerplate.
Yeah, it's not like there's much else to do about it.
Do I have a motion?
So are we,
I move to move policy number 1822, training and professional development for board members, to a second reading at our first meeting in January.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move this forward for a second reading. Okay. Next up, we have Chief Financial Officer Jennifer Jacobson, who will present a budgetary update to the board. There she is.
Good evening. I just have a very brief update for you tonight. I know the agenda's very full, so I'll keep this short. Really just three things. First of all, an enrollment update for 21-22. We did some projections in October for the year, and we're holding pretty stable. We're not seeing any big swings in enrollment. I think November was up about 30 students and December was down. So we're staying relatively stable. I wasn't sure if we'd see any swings there, but so that's we projected just under 23,000 FTE for this current school year. Also, as far as year-end update, I did close up the financials, and I'm working on the notes. We ended 2021 with about just under 29 million in the fund balance. I'm planning to do a year-end presentation in January. And so I think it is interesting to look at the effects of the pandemic and the drop in enrollment over a couple of years. So I plan to present that in January. There is also, I should mention, a possibility that we might receive some enrollment stabilization funds. We're still early in that process, so but that is kind of on the forefront right now. And lastly, I was going to speak more about Esser Funds. So Julie did a great job already talking about the work we've been doing. We just really wanted to be very transparent with the website of how much we've been allocated, how much has been spent, and really kind of what our future plans are for these funds. So, should be coming up any minute. We've already discussed, you know, in previous meetings where Esser 1 and Esser 2 funds are being spent. Esser 3 funds are from the American Rescue Plan, and those were, that passed in March of 2021. And we were allocated or given the opportunity to access $40 million in these Esser 3 funds. And these were primarily to support sustained safe building reopenings and operations while meeting the academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs of students resulting from the pandemic. So the earlier funds were more in reaction. We were, you know, doing enhanced cleaning and PPE and, you know, those upfront costs. This is more of a long-term, how can we address the needs of our students that have been through this. So, so we put this website together so that we could get some community input on where we want to spend these funds. I put together a spreadsheet of the allowable uses of Esser funds so people understand how the funds can be used. In June, the Teaching and Learning Department had to put that recovery plan in place in order to start school back up and to have access to these funds. So that was approved by OSPI. So we put that on the website as well. There's the survey. There's the recovery plan. So we wanted to provide this funds usage update. So you can see the allocation, what we've claimed through November 30th, and kind of what funds are still available. And we'll keep this updated. And on the left side, I have a slide, a pie chart of kind of where we have been spending the Esser 1 and 2 plan, or, you know, funds. And then we have a preliminary Esser 3 plan because we had to have the grant application in by the end of August to get access to the funds. So we based it kind of on what we were currently doing, reduced class size. Addressing learning loss is really summer schools, assessments, curriculum, and then of course continuing with enhanced cleaning and supporting our equity department as well. So that preliminary Esser 3 plan is just a preliminary plan. There's a lot of flexibility in how we can spend those funds going forward, and so we plan to all work together to see, you know, get community input and decide the best path forward. So we just want to be very intentional on our use of the funds and very transparent. So that's the purpose here. We also at the bottom have some of the communications that have gone out regarding our Esser funds. So that's really all I had for tonight.
Does anyone have any questions?
Just my thanks. It looks like we're ahead of the game on the attestation requirement, and appreciate the work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Appreciate that. Okay, next up on our agenda is board comments. I'm going to kick this off. I have a statement that I'd like to read. I want to acknowledge as the school board president and a school board member for more than 2 decades how hard this last week has been to hear and see students not feeling safe. The one consistent theme that drives all of us is the commitment to keeping everyone in our district safe and secure, both mentally and physically, to ensure that learning is the primary focus in our schools. In the last week, it has also become clear after listening to our students that we need to examine our processes and make it even safer and easier to report any unwanted or threatening behavior. Sexual assault and harassment are very difficult and personal issues for our young people to feel comfortable coming forward to speak about and report, and we need to remove any barriers that prevent that from happening. First, I want to assure you the district thoroughly investigates complaints brought forward by students or families. Our school employees are mandatory reporters, meaning by law they must follow up and report any abuse of students to the proper authorities. Second, there are a number of policies, many outlined in state code, on all the steps and protections afforded to students. I want our community to know that we take action against any person that violates our policies and procedures and work with our law enforcement partners to remove them when they break the law. Unfortunately, the type of transparency many people want, which is to know specific outcomes and actions, is not possible given the state and federal privacy laws. Our system is not perfect. We need to make sure every student in our care has the opportunity to step forward and safely and compassionately have understanding adults take action. We encourage a thoughtful and productive dialogue with our community and especially our students on how best to move forward. I had an opportunity today to visit with some students at Union High School. I was there to talk to them about voting, but we also talked about their voice matters, their votes matter, and we need to hear from them. And you saw an example with Susan. Students are ready and willing to step forward and speak their truth about what's happening in their lives at school. And so we really encourage that. And I'm excited about working with students. So I'll turn it over to other board members. Do you want to talk about what you've been doing, Jenny?
Yes, so along that lines, this past week, we've opened, excuse me, up additional lines of communication with some of our students, offering meetings with them. I have met with one student. I have another meeting tomorrow. Heather Feller has been amazing in, leading our students, working with them through the protests. And I do want to say that the students and their ability to put together activities like the protest and to share their voice and their concerns and to get the attention of all of us in the way that they did. They had our attention. They didn't realize they had our attention. But just the way that they have actually, presented themselves and conducted themselves through all of this has been amazing. And they went through a lot of things. And so I have been fortunate to be able to open up additional lines of communication, sit down and have conversations with some students. And also, like Victoria said, to brainstorm with them and come up with better ways for us to move forward and for reporting and for additional things like that. So I think that this isn't a great, nobody wants our students to be hurt. We want them to be safe, but I think the outcome is a stronger district and stronger relationships with our students.
Thanks for reading that, Victoria. I agree with everything that you said in that. I think, it's not a perfect system, right? That sometimes things happen. And there's always an opportunity for us to get better, or like when Jenny said, to make sure that they have our attention and that we're listening, because when our students speak, we need to be ready to listen. And I want our students to know that we have a safe environment and that they can come forward and that somebody will listen to them. I like Victoria, I've had an opportunity to go to Henrietta Lacks and talk to a classroom this week, and it was very refreshing. We talked about voting and what it means to run for office and things like that. I would think it was part of their civics. But in telling them how important their voice is and that we are here to listen to them. So I love going and listening to our students. They always teach me something. And we need to be here to support our students in every way possible.
Anyone else have comments for?
Well, I'm made thoughtful by the fact that it hasn't quite been 2 years since the last time we had a substantive discussion about this and began our policy development cycle around the results policy for student safety and our operational expectation for the student environment, in which we changed our language and our terminology and insisted in policy that actually, a better way to put this would be to articulate in policy all of these values. We have always had a core value of student safety. I cannot imagine a single dedicated teacher who doesn't share that value. And I think the pandemic restrictions and the limitations have imposed a lot of additional toxic stress on students, teachers, parents, all families. That is bubbling up in this moment. I've asked that as we get into the school improvement plan cycle in the next weeks and months, that I suggest we could give that a focus and evaluate the data that we're seeing through this lens and with the information that we've gathered from students, and hope to build some hope and create an actual sense, as we put it in policy, of physical, emotional, and social safety. Now that we're learning there are some students, at least some students, who have yet to attain that sense. I think it'll be good, joyful work.
Thank you, Rob. Rachel?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Next up is future agenda items. I think we just heard one articulated here by Rob. Do we have any other future agenda items that we would like to put on the board's agenda?
I guess just maybe, because we had our WASDA workshop that many of us attended on the student representatives, and so that kind of goes in line with some of the things we just talked about, so maybe just get an update on that.
Okay, right, you want an update now?
No, at a future.
We'll actually be bringing them through because we've already did our workshop at our retreat over the summer. So it'll come in for first reading and all of that. The policy on the school board or the school reps, is that where you're?
Yeah, I just didn't know, because I thought, I don't remember. I
It
think
was all
be-
supposed to happen this week, and then with everything else, it just kind of got stalled a little bit.
Okay, I just want to make sure we don't lose
No.
sight of it.
No. Anything else? Okay. Now on the agenda is our time for citizen comments. Citizens can speak to the board about anything that is not currently on the agenda, is not personnel or legal in nature. Our time is limited to 3 minutes, and we have one person who's signed up. That's, is that Lonnie? Is that the first name? Lonnie Satch? Am I pronouncing those? Lori Satch. Oh, looks like an N. Is Lori here tonight?
Is she online?
Lori? Okay. Okay. Hi, Lori. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. All right, so as you know, my name is Lori Schott, and I'd like to speak tonight. Thank you so much for allowing me some time. Yes, I'm echoing on the subject of health and safety for the students.
Okay, we have no others that have signed up to speak tonight. Oh, wait. No, we don't have. Yeah, that's what I said. Okay. So at this point, we will go into recess. It is 6:39. And we will sign documents. We will return for a workshop on the 2022-23 school calendar, strategic planning, operational expectation policy, OE, on equity, followed by an executive session to review the performance of a public employee, expected to last approximately 1 hour. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. I'd like to reconvene and move us into a workshop. First up, I'm going to have Janae Gomes talk to us about the school calendar.
I'll just sit over here. Yes, thank you for having me before you. So there's a proposed calendar in front of you for the 22-23 school year. It looks pretty similar to this year, and it has school convening on August 30th with our professional development days prior to that. We worked with the surrounding districts to make sure we have the same spring break. Most of the schools are also starting on the 30th. I'm just looking to see if there's anything that's really different. The winter break, because of the way that the holidays are falling next year, we will need 1 extra day in recognition of the holiday, which is that Monday. So it's like 1 day longer. And just the holidays, the break for first semester and second semester happened to fall right for the 90 school days for each one. Of course, unless there's snow days, that could adjust that, but it did work out perfectly for that with that Friday and then starting Monday. And again, like I said, we have the same spring breaks as our surrounding districts. Put in a couple of snow makeup days, with the last day of school being June 15th. And then we put in order the snow makeup days listed on there. EEA has reviewed that as well, shared it with the other unions and cabinet, and bringing it before you, and if you have any questions.
Okay, has the different groups been able to review it? And
Yeah, I shared it with everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I saw Bill putting his thumb up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we ran it, and she had already, the main thing is spring break lining up, and Janae figured that out, which was awesome. So that's the main.
Is it known which districts are not aligned?
Huh?
Is it known which of our neighboring districts are not aligned with the?
No, we're all have the same spring break.
And
Is
so-
that
I
what you were
can't
asking me?
understand you, Janae. Can you?
Oh, we all have the same spring break. Sorry.
Portland?
Oh, I didn't look at Portland.
Okay.
I just looked at our.
So the
surrounding.
Clark County
Yeah.
school districts are aligned. And let's see, last day of school is the 15th. Does that make the graduations, the senior graduations, potentially the 9th and 10th of June?
Julie or Heather?
Okay. Is the order of the high schools known at this time
Is what?
for graduation? Is the order of the high schools known?
Rob, can you speak into your microphone, please?
I was-
Thank you.
I was trying. Is this better?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So the order is not known at this time. Okay. I have no more questions.
All right, thanks. Anyone else?
I was just gonna ask about starting before Labor Day and make sure that was coinciding with most of the other districts too.
That is accurate.
Okay. That always seems to be the big debate,
Yeah.
hood to coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is a thing, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
we actually looked at that, and that Friday's off. Right. Yeah, I remember that from last year.
That's great. Any other questions? Anybody want to add anything out there in La La Land?
No, this was an easy one, they've all been hard. Even better, and state falls on a Friday next year.
That's
So,
great.
yeah.
Okay,
All right,
thank you
thank you.
so much.
Yep.
And now just an update on the strategic plan regarding the community input.
So the update on the strategic plan, we wanted to go through and show you the next step in this is getting community input. So the presentation that we'll go through today is the one that we are going to be presenting and going through with the committee and what they've already looked at to see what the presentation will be. The committee and the goal is that the committee members, that they'll be going out in teams of 3 to present this to the community. So there's a few steps about, first, just why do we need a strategic plan? So I think it's important when we're going out to the community, we're talking about having a consistent through line and message. And we've had a lot of changes in our district. We continue to. And it's important that we have this document and this vision document that centers us. So it will be a really great piece to talk about and to see that our vision of what we've been doing, everything we talk about, is communicated through this document. So there's 3 parts to the strategic plan and the work that we did. The first part was establishing a common vision. The second part was focus on equity. And then the third part is the through line, that the dots are connected and then we can see everything. And then at that, the center is our strategic plan. So we'll remind everyone who was involved in this process. We reached out to every department in the district. We also reached out to teachers. We had an EEA member on there. We had students. We had community members. Not all of these participants were at all the meetings, but they were invited to every meeting to have input. And you'll see there's a wide range of participants in the planning. Here's just a reminder of what we did. We had 8 meetings. In those meetings, we did a lot of community building with those meetings, make sure everyone felt comfortable, had a voice in what we were talking about. And then through the 8th meeting, we got to what we'll show tonight, the draft plan. So just some pictures of the community committee, in action. And then what does the plan consist of? So first, during the plan, we went through and we're describing our shared vision and mission, our shared goals. We created an EPS tagline, our pillars, the desired outcomes and action items, and then a measurement framework. So we got to that by a community building exercise in which we had different categories and wrote all the things that were important. And then you got one really important sticky note. And through that, these are the categories that came out that were our shared values and goals that we needed to center ourselves around in the planning process. So with students, we wanted to make sure the plan showed that all students are welcome, loved, and heard. We have a diverse student body that we want to celebrate. We place students at the center in everything we do. Student outcomes cannot be predicted based on race or other characteristics, and support and opportunities exist for students to succeed at every level. So there's a bunch of bullets. I'm not going to read all of them as we go through this, as you have access to this and we can get you access to it. But as we talk about the shared values and goals, our students, staff, community, and then our communication, culture, and governance. And those were the categories as we were talking about the strategic plan to keep in mind. What is it that we wanted to communicate, and how would we do it through those big ideas? Clarissa?
Okay. All right, and as we know, 2 really big parts of a strategic plan are the mission and the vision. And so our committee went through several iterations of a mission statement as well as a vision statement. And we have decided on these 2 draft mission statements that the community will then vote on. And we also decided on 2 draft vision statements that the community will be able to vote on. And the reason why I emphasize the iteration is because we made sure, as Julie mentioned, that we had a very diverse group of folks on the committee. And so when things came up that stood out or that folks didn't understand or felt strongly about or whatever things that would have come up in that space, all of that is represented in both the 2 draft mission and vision statements. So we really feel like we have a good product, if you will, to present to our community when that time comes. In addition to mission and vision, there's a tagline that will go along with that, something quick, easy to remember, but really, really powerful and impactful. And that tagline is relationships, rigor, and results. And that came through, these 3 things came through in that initial activity that we did that Julie referenced, where folks just kind of brainstorm, like, what's super important to us? Relationship building was huge, not only within the district, but outside, so with community. Rigor, you've heard me mention that already earlier as a part of our culture responsive practices, a Ready for Rigor framework. But then results. Results is where that equity lives. So if we are building great relationships, we're establishing rigor for our students, we hope that we are seeing increased outcomes and better results for our students. So we have relationships, rigor, and results as a tagline. From the goal areas that Julie mentioned before, we have the pillars that came from that. Okay, teaching and learning, school environment, family and community, employee engagement, and then systems alignment. Under each of these, what we noticed is that the systems alignment piece, rather than having it as its own pillar, should live in all of the other pillars. And so we moved that visually to the bottom, knowing that is present in all of the other pillars. And additionally, we wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that all of these things relate back to the student experience. And so we made sure to have that at the very top of said visual, in addition to adding the tagline of relationships, rigor, and results. Mind you, I'm continuing to say draft because even this visualization is not necessarily how it will end. We will be taking input from the community as we do this to make sure that we have the best representation so that every member of our school community, students, parents, community members who don't have students in our district but are very engaged and involved in what's happening, can understand it and know where we are and what we are doing. One of the features of the strategic plan are these intended outcomes for each of the pillars that I mentioned to you. These are also a work in progress. After we have established and adopted a strategic plan, there will also be the establishing of a steering committee, right, for the strategic plan that will help further tweak these intended outcomes, but will also help us evaluate the progress and process of how the strategic plan is playing out. And that committee will also be diverse in its members. Let me go through all of these. There's one for each of them. So the next steps for the plan is the community engagement piece that we spoke to. We have already gave a preview of the training session to each of the members. We're going to have a follow-up training session where we do some really intentional practicing of the presentation that the triplet groups, if you will be doing for the community. And we'll begin that in January and host some listening sessions for folks to come in, hear the presentation, but then also take the time to do the voting that we talked about on the mission and vision. And give them the opportunity in that space, if they'd like. And then the committee will seek the input of the following. Here we have for the mission and vision, the outcomes that I mentioned before. And then that third piece is this graduate portrait that prioritizes what it is we aspire to have our graduates equipped with as we send them off to be productive citizens in our community. That piece will also get input from the community. Okay, and these are just some of the tentative dates for when those things will be happening here on this slide. Okay. All right, that is all. That I know that was quick, and that happened for us in 8 meetings over several months. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Anybody have any questions?
Do you know if the portrait of a graduate that you're planning to build is aligned with the State Board of Education's work to build a portrait of a graduate under the statute that was passed?
It has not yet been formulated, but if that is something that it should be, then we'll definitely use it as a guide, for sure.
They are completing the initial stages of their work, and it really looks an awful lot like our results policies and the pictures of the pathways that we built and advocated for, and might be, if your side of that work hasn't commenced, it might constitute something worthwhile to look into. Would you like me to connect you with that?
Yeah, that'd be great. We as we planned with Education Northwest, who is facilitating this, that'd be great to have. They'd appreciate it. And I'm glad you mentioned that. One of the pieces in the beginning, under that governance pillar, our committee utilized and got a little bit more familiar with the results policies of the board as they were thinking about all of those other things. So to add this piece, I think will complement it well.
Okay. I appreciate the clarity that this brings. It's really inserting, I guess, the kind of clear communication and hope that we hope to build.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our Equity Advisory Committee will be looking at this on Thursday and providing their input as well.
Beautiful.
Great, thank you. Thank you. It's been a very enjoyable committee to be a part of, I have to admit. Okay, next on our agenda is Operational Expectation Policy OE. Is that 10 or X?
It's X.
Okay, it is X, okay.
It's a little x so that it isn't confused with Roman numeral 10.
Well, that's
but
why I couldn't tell, because I had both,
that's
so
kind of
I was
yeah.
wondering. All right, so do we have anybody who's assigned to present on this? Or this is just for our review as we move forward with our OEs?
I can make some comments and things. This is the product of the work that Rachel and I did that we examined in part at our last workshop, and if you'll recall, we discussed, we read out this policy and then discussed the opportunity to have the District Equity Committee review it and make suggestions, especially because it's entitled Equity. And they have a set of 3 or 4 substantive suggestions that they would like the board to hear. And so I asked, you should have all gotten an email with the details of that, but I asked Clarissa if she'd be willing to bring the voice of that committee to us and see if we like the edits they propose.
Okay. Yes, I'm happy to do that and speak on behalf of our committee. So we have 3 that we'd like to present to you. The first one being for item number 2 here in the policy. And one of the things that we'd like to suggest is in the, where it says permit robust conversations, we'd like to add the word support. So permit and support robust conversations. And this just speaks to that idea that we hope to do more than just permit the conversations, but to also support them in ways that feel ongoing, and that the effort can be seen through, additional PD or resources, et cetera. So, for example, this is a really good example of adaptive leadership versus technical leadership. And I'm going to use, because we have Julie Bokenegger who works in banking, I thought of a banking scenario to kind of give some idea about this. But it's really the idea of opportunity versus access here. So the opportunity would be the permitting, right? We provide this opportunity, here you go. The access is that support that we're having. So now that we've provided you with this opportunity, how will we then continue to support you in this endeavor so that it can continue to be successful. So we just like to add that language to item number 2 with your permission, or hoping you will talk about that and see how you feel about it.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Next one?
The next one are around items 3 and 4. And the language that we have there is how would, one of our members talked about adding, so this is a lot of additions, mind you. There's not a lot of things we want to take away, we want to add. One of our team members who, considering, her line of work, which is in social work and mental health, but just the current state, pro-COVID, and just considering some of the things that Rob was mentioning earlier about the social, emotional, and mental health of our community, adding this idea of trauma, the impacts of trauma or trauma exposure to the list of identities here, or to the elements that staff are directed to counter and eliminate. The language around it can be, we want to add that idea into element 3, if we can, or 4, depending on which one you want to do it under. That's
I kind of like it in 4
okay.
because it feels more action oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like we talked about up on 2.
Mm-hmm.
So the impacts, it would read something like the impacts of racism, discrimination, bias, unconscious bias, and trauma, or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
in order to include that idea in the policy,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that?
That's fine.
Okay.
Jean?
Yeah.
Rachel?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
All right. And then the last one is another addition, and very similar to the first rationale, in that we want to add to the phrase create, or excuse me, create, where it starts with create in item number 4, add the word support, so an additional verb. So not only do we want to create it, but we want to also put in the resources, professional development to continue supporting this effort in number 4. It's a more actionable thing.
I definitely like these action words.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to me on that one. I don't. Rest of
Yep.
you?
I'm good with it. Yep.
So this would be, again, with that juxtaposition between opportunity and access, so that we're talking about access by adding the word support.
Correct.
All right.
It keeps us from doing chequity, right? It's like, oh, we did it and we're done. No, we did it and we're going to sustain it. We're going to support it. We're going to continue it.
Exactly, because it's never ending.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of an operational expectation, I have the broad question, not the specifics or examples of, but the broad question of whether it's possible for a superintendent to draw data out of the system in order to report and affirm compliance with
Mm-hmm.
these statements that the superintendent will permit and support, create and support, and so forth. Does it, even with these, with these edits or with the language in general, does that seem still possible to you?
Absolutely,
Okay.
for sure.
Great.
So, I could,
Even better than before.
it sure is. I could insert the language into a first reading very next meeting if you
That'd
want.
be awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clarissa. Again, thank your team. They do an awesome job, and they've been so helpful as we've developed these policies.
Wow.
Oh,
We made it.
pardon?
It's like, wow, we actually,
I
like,
know,
it.
it's
Timing.
amazing. Okay, so now the board will go out of the workshop, and we will go into executive session. The time, where's my time? Time is 7:27. And we will go into session to review the performance of a public employee. We estimate that this will take about an hour. Thank you for being here tonight and for all of your assistances in the workshop.